I see the chat. Hi.
All
Hi,
right.
everyone. Hello.
Hello, hello. All right, then I'd say let's kick it off. If someone else wants to join, Michael, maybe you want to give me the rights in the maybe make me a co-host that I can let other people in.
Yeah, I'll try make co-host.
Perfect.
Yes. Good.
All right, I'll let other people in, and I'll do the overall moderation so you can focus on your code editor. All right, so yeah, welcome everyone. This time I'm here again. Last time 2 weeks ago, I unfortunately caught a cold and wasn't feeling quite like it, but glad to be back and glad to be doing this session together with Michael. So this is kind of part 2 to the session from last time where I wasn't there. But to give a quick motivation again, what today's effect time session will be about, which is we want to demonstrate a bit of like what it's like to use effect to wrap some functionality of, like in this case, Node APIs that you're probably familiar with, and build a little wrapper that makes it more effect idiomatic, and therefore makes you more productive when eventually using it in your own applications and packages. And the hopeful side effect of that is that we're generally like enhancing the standard library of effect, and in this case, providing a lot of functionality around the file system module. But so I think there's like a lot of positive learnings there, how you can wrap things yourself, learning about internals of effect. And I guess like while building it, we also see a bit of how we would use these packages. And so the impetus for this particular topic was that I've been using effect in a lot of applications already, and in a lot of them, when I had to do something with the file system, I ended up building my own little file system wrapper. And after copy and pasting the same code between packages, between applications, I figured, okay, this probably should be in one of the official effect packages. And so I suggested this idea to Michael, who I think got excited about this idea. So here we are, part 2. And Michael already got started on that the last time around. So maybe, Mike, if you want to give a quick recap on where we've left off last time, and a quick idea of like what we could expect to get done today.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, during the week, I've changed a little bit the master. I've updated to Yarn 3, and so unfortunately we have to rebase today, given I've left the branch precisely where we've left off. But the general idea was, inside the Node package, we can have a file system module that works around interoperability with the Node file system. That, from the perspective of the user, should be testable. So we spoke a little bit about testability of services and how to leverage the environment to achieve a swappable implementation that you can use in your tests to provide mocked versions of or dummies of the implementations. And we have started to scaffold the first function, which was to write to a file. Now, Johannes have already a baseline of code that we probably want to port almost one by one, but thinking around like we did here in the WriteFile. We have started using the asynchronous API, and then we've realized we could use the abort controller to handle the interruption signal correctly and do this sort of stuff.
Which, by the way, I think is one of the superpowers that effect gives you where like, and makes this wrapper around the file system module even more useful. So I think, yeah, effect unlocks a lot of benefits, and automatic cancellation of longer running operations, I think, is one of it. So this makes the wrapper around the file system, if it auto cancels on a board, even more useful and powerful, and might be one of the reasons why people move to effect.
Jesus.
All right, you seem to be having fun with the Git merges.
Yeah, I am having fun with Git merges, but it's most likely because I'm incapable of using the tooling that I am forcing myself to progressively use. Okay, that's the correct.
Guess you're almost there.
I guess I am. It seems.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's pray that everything works.
Almost. And also, to set expectations for this session, we could probably do a bunch more sessions just around building the file system wrapper for an effect node. But I guess after this session, we'll switch gears again for effect time for the time being. We might pick it up again in a public way a bit further down the road. And work will continue, I think, regardless. But I think leaving this at 2 sessions for now, it's probably adequate. But yeah, and we'll just get so much done today as we'll get done. I think there's a lot of exciting features that we could build into this. For example, building a variant of the file system functions and with streaming in mind, I think could be really interesting. I think we could also think through, okay, like would be integrated with OpenTelemetry in some way, which is the way how I've used it so far. And I guess this is another way, general thing that we need to think through. Do we want to provide these functions in a traced way out of the box or not? I think this is something to more generally think through. For now, we'll probably keep it simple, but there's a lot to expand on here from the session onward.
Absolutely. So it seems that I am indeed almost there. I have to amend. And it should be fine. Yarn.
All right. Too cool to be null. Cool name, by the way. Is asking, I saw Zio removing has. Are there any plans to do the same in effect? If I remember correctly, there was like a few days ago in the effect Discord and effect TS channel, I think there was a conversation around that topic. So you can, I can put a link in the chat if I find it. But I think the consensus was no, for reasons that Michael's probably in a better position to explain.
Absolutely. So,
but let's just keep it brief on that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, very brief. But the key difference is in Scala intersection type. Scala has a nominal type system, while TypeScript has a structural type system. So in Scala, a generic intersection of 2 nominal types doesn't collide automatically if there are structural differences. Now, in TypeScript, if we have any incompatibility between 2 services at the type level, the intersection will be never. So we need a form of indexing from the actual type to the fact that the type is within the environment that is represented by has. Now, we haven't settled fully on the structure of services, there are like still a little bit of discussion around that, because we are changing the encoding of has. We have changed recently the encoding of has, but generally speaking, I think we can't get rid of anything in TypeScript automatically. But we can keep the boilerplate to the absolute minimum.
All right, let's dig into the main topic. So where did we leave off the last time? If I understood correctly, you've built a first wrapper for WriteFile with similar semantics as WriteFile from FS, and you've built a little logger, kind of like companion example app where you've leveraged this, which obviously later we would split up. But
we'll actually remove that.
Yeah,
this was just an example that I've done in the last minutes to show how the FS service would be used in an application like. But at this point, I think we can erase that completely.
Right. Would you generally say it's the right way to model this, to turn the FS module into a layer that you can access? So the way how I've wrapped it so far was basically just as like normal functions or normal effects that would just leverage the FS node module under the hood. So could you briefly elaborate on the benefits and potential downsides of modeling this as a layer?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take an example of this logger. How would you test this live implementation? So from the perspective of the consumer of this logger module, you want to use the logger, but you have to assess that this logger correctly uses the file system.
Right.
To test this implementation. So in order to do that, you have to abstract the FS. Now, such a standard thing in the Node environment could be provided by the Node runtime, which has a default environment.
Got it. So right now, the default environment has the clock, for example, already, and we could
the clock has the random, but in general, it'll be expanded to have a console. It'll be expanded to have,
nice.
A little bit more. And in the context of Node, we can have a file system.
Yep.
And stuff like that.
So testability makes a lot of sense. The downside would be that I need to like provide it explicitly, but that's downside is again like nulled by having it in the default Node environment.
By having it in the default Node environment, precisely.
Right. Yep. That makes a lot of sense. Great. So what would you suggest as
a general sort of a general pattern? You usually, even in your application, sometimes you want to wrap things in environments for the sole reason of like having something taken from environment, not only well, you abstract more the functionality, because you no longer need to know about the dependencies of that functionality. I just use a logger. I don't care if the logger is implemented with the file system or with a Kafka stream implementation or with a printout to the console.
Right.
It's one layer and one layer of more. Good.
That sounds great. One quick thought, or just to understand it properly, in the case of this logger here, which again is an example application of this now, but the way how it works right now is like if we would use it somewhere in my application and I would say log, the way how it works right now is like that. It's like you'd have to wait until the log is done. The log here includes like the file is written, right? So it's not kind of like written in the background.
Yeah, I mean, it's not how you would implement a file-based logger.
Yep.
It's a completely different implementation. The purpose was just to show how you would.
Got it. Makes sense. Just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
Great. Would you suggest basically
proper logger-based implementation, you would have a file resource open at the beginning and any other call made to write on the open file handle.
Yep, that makes sense.
You have to control the concurrency of that, because if you use an asynchronous API, you could write two things concurrently on the same file.
That makes sense. As next steps, would you suggest we basically go beyond the WriteFile method and go to implement more? Another thing that I think would be great to expand on is to have a bit more like semantic errors. Since this was one of the main benefits also I already got out of my own wrapping. So maybe you want in a temporary tab, just like copy paste in my little implementation of the FS module that we can just check it off one by one, that we end up on some like on a similarly capable implementation later. It's probably going to be a better implementation, but at least in terms of the functionality that we're aiming towards the same coverage.
Yeah, let me take it.
I think you can just create a new tab, and like you don't even need to save it as a file. But yeah, that works. So yeah, you don't need to fix it or anything. I think the interesting bits is which kind of functions I've created for myself here, and I don't feel too strongly about how like which one there are, which one there aren't. Just gives you an idea. And I've also, like, for example, the stat error, I've like just came up with more or less semantic errors that I could then again use in my application. Whereas I also think that these errors could be modeled in a much better way. And there's been cases where it's already kind of like wondering, okay, is this the right way, or is that the right way? For example, if you see in line 155, you see file order not found error, and you see a file not found error. So there is already, I think there's going to be an interesting deliberation around how to structure these errors, how to unify them, how to split them up, etc.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting.
But let's start from like one place, and maybe before adding more functionality, maybe want to create the semantic error for WriteFile.
Absolutely, because actually there is already a small wrapper around, but I think we have to improve on that.
Yep.
Now I'd like to create some sort of tagging function, given we're gonna have a lot of tags to generate, to not have the specifying the prefix all the time.
Yep.
Let me try to do that.
So just while you write it, I'll like explain what I thought, what you just said, which is basically in line 10 here, where we have the export class error exception. We're gonna have like a lot of these tagged classes. And so to avoid boilerplate, you're already like in your mind racing ahead and like doing the refactoring that we might need in the future.
Going two, three steps ahead.
Got it. Yeah.
I've seen too many prefixes already.
Right.
Yeah. But lucky for us, TypeScript turns out.
I guess for you, building an application and building a library is starting to blend to be the same thing.
With the fact there is no difference.
Yeah.
That's the funny thing. It makes no difference whatsoever. Now, when I do language level stuff, that's different.
Yep.
But unless
that's not what today is about.
Yeah, that's not what today is about. It's gonna quickly become that thing. But anyway, okay. Okay. Seems decent.
All right.
not that it's needed in any way. Why doesn't it auto formats?
Yeah, yes.
Wait a second. Have I disabled? Yeah.
Okay.
The reason is I was working on the compiler and I'm dealing with 40K plus lines source codes, and ESLint is absolutely a nightmare. Good. Seems reasonable.
All right, now we have nicely namespaced errors that always later on when they will be thrown, then we always see, okay, this is coming from my FactTS node file system. Great. So
okay. This is a WriteFile exception. So let's start to use proper name. WriteFile. Let's call it that.
All right. Yeah, let's put it in here.
The type of options kind of sucks.
Yeah. I think it's a question of like how whether we want to diverge from the way how you mean like from a purely TypeScript perspective, not how the options are modeled?
Sort of.
You have like your secret bag of types.
But I don't understand why this doesn't flood it out.
Yeah, let's maybe keep a note here and like come back to that later, so we can move on with the actual implementation.
Yeah.
Sorry to prevent your perfectionism here. It's always like very.
No, the point is these options I think are object encoding mod flag. We're gonna have to reuse it in different places. So
let's burn that bridge when we cross it.
Let me try to do something different.
All right. The first one, extract the type alias.
Yeah, I don't want a type alias. I don't want.
But an interface.
Precisely.
For the audience who might not be aware of like why interface instead of an type alias, something I learned myself as well is that like they behave very similar, but interface here has one benefit that we're interested in, which is that if you hover over it, you see like in the language server and VS Code that it says write file options instead of like the thing that it's like alias to. So instead of seeing this intersection of like fs options, blah, blah, blah. And so that's called an opaque type as opposed to a transparent type, what type aliases are. So in here it has basically, we give it more semantic meaning by using an interface, so that's more recognizable. And that's, I guess, why Michael is using it here.
Yeah, now we see the
perfect,
far better signature.
All right, then let's, should we like do, so WriteFile error, that's very broad. So for example, what I've done is already try to like make it semantically a little bit more granular by also having like a file not found error, which is a very common case. Would you agree that this would be like a useful distinction to make in the error case here already, or what are you thinking?
I think there's degrees.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is, if this is to be the Node.js wrapper, I would want things close to how Node represent stuff, just to provide enough low level.
Right.
But I think I was like, it's an idea I've got actually from the internals of the compiler in TypeScript, how they abstract the concept of a host. They don't directly access the file system, but they access it through a host. Maybe a host which is like a virtual machine that might be backed by writing files or stuff like that, but could be a database or could be anything else.
Right.
Be a valuable thing. And for that, I would make more.
Oh yeah, totally
granular.
Totally. Like, yeah, one of the apps I'm working on is there we're also like, we've built the first version with the file system, and later on we realized, okay, we also want to run it in the browser or for testing like in a virtual way. So we've come up with a wrapper ourselves that sort of like virtualizes the file system, where we either have like an in-memory file system or like a actual like file-based system. Yeah, I think that sounds very valuable. But yeah, I think that's a great idea for the future. So that means we leave the error as is. And
at the moment, yes.
Yeah, sounds good.
But we might, I mean, a more composed function might have like maybe not the union of two errors, and we might create a proper description of a more complex operation, like an append to file if the file doesn't exist.
Yep.
I'm not really sure. Anyway, I think writing to files, it's a good moment to also read from files.
That sounds just like a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, they seems to be very, very basic types of things. And one thing we should mention here, file system in Node means different things. At the moment, we are using the asynchronous API, but we might use lower level APIs. For example, in a read file, there's many ways to read the file. The async way, which is one of the most inefficient, or there is just opening up the file descriptor and read by batches in batches at buffer level. That is very efficient, and most likely in that model also plays really well with streams.
Nice.
Streams are a pool-based mechanism. So a stream which is backed by the lower level API of Node would effectively just read a chunk of data from a file when it's explicitly required by the caller, and won't have any sort of queuing or anything in between. So performance-wise would be extremely good.
That sounds great. Let's see whether towards the end of the session we have a little bit of time left to start digging into that.
Yeah.
All right.
So as the last time, when you're building wrappers around JavaScript libraries, and if you're using effect, it's something you're gonna end up doing. I'm not
At least
saying
for now, like now we have to pioneer a bunch of stuff, but I think like in a year or two, you might probably already have wrappers for most of the stuff you're looking for.
Much of the stuff you're looking for, yeah, but still, it's not. Takes a while. Anyway, we take a look at the function description, and we just begin by cloning the signature. It's an abortable, so same structure as the WriteFile.
Nice. Do we want to keep it in the make live fs callback, or do we want to maybe move it up?
It's supposed to happen at bootstrap time when you're providing the first layer.
Mm-hmm.
So doesn't really. It's actually very common. It's a very common pattern that you're doing this within an effect. Now I'm doing this within a succeed with because this doesn't depend on anything else. But you might want to use generators.
Got it.
Or maybe in 6 months' time, the do notations.
Right.
Anyway, arguments. Good. Those are the arguments. To start with, they're terrible, but fs dot. Good. Abortable. We don't want the abortable. And this type is simple. Insanity. That seems better. I'll make an interface.
I think you can still use the refactor tooling if you focus it to extract as type alias and then just rename it.
Yeah, this I can actually extract even to an interface.
Ah, there you go. Perfect. However, I think that's now in the wrong scope.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I'll move it out. Read file options, but I'm still not sure about something because in the WriteFile, we don't really care about the output. The output is void.
Right.
In this case, read file. Here I'm specifying the encoding.
We might want to have different overloads.
Rather than different overloads, I think they could even be different functions at some level.
Right.
So yep. Or have some minimum.
I guess it depends on like how close we want to stay to the original API.
I think that's simply a bad way to represent things. So I wouldn't. I think part of building a wrapper is just not to proxy the API, but to build a common sense.
Right.
Need.
Yeah, I think additive change, like just exposing additional thing, is probably less opinionated than just changing the API.
Let's see anyway where will it. It's a read file. I have a path. Options. But in options, I do want to do the same thing as here. And the callback I don't have to provide. No, that seems to return always a buffer.
I think depends on the on the encoding. If the encoding is UTF-8, then I think it returns a string.
The signature doesn't. Buffer encoding.
Yeah, but you see, like you're looking at different overloads here.
Data string. Oh, I'm looking at different overloads.
That's gonna be fun. But maybe it's already now is the good time where we like per overload we create a different variant, keep it simple for now, and we might unify this later if we like long for that.
Let's start with the one that returns a buffer.
Yep.
A buffer.
So I've also already in my use cases I've created variants, and I've had one is like read file as buffer and one is read file as string. So I've already done that.
What are those flags?
I think these flags are I've super rarely used them, but I think it's like on a file level.
False to read. Okay, it's the
Yeah.
protection. Okay, they can stay. So I think realistically we only want to take the null. Actually, we don't want to take an encoding at all, and we're wanna So that's only flags, which
I think it's also okay to like leave some holes in like the coverage for now. And yeah.
Like the flags either are there or are not, and that's pretty much it.
For everyone watching in Zoom as well, feel free to ask any questions at any time. I think sometimes also the motivating questions are interesting. So why we do a certain thing in a certain way, or have we considered X? So feel free to like just ask your question in the chat, and I'll weave it in.
Let's start from here. We want, first of all, a read file error. Read file error. Flags. For example, one thing we might want to do is to propagate the arguments into the error. So they are easy.
Yep. Totally. I think.
And
yep.
Let's go on a step by step.
That's been one of the most useful things on my on my own wrapper of the file system module, especially together with OpenTelemetry, where like in the OpenTelemetry traces, therefore I would see the error meta arguments, such as encoding, or more often like most useful is the file path.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of typed errors, and it's actually one of the cases where our development experience is far better than the Scala ones at the moment, is that errors can be extremely granular and can contain a lot of information about what went wrong. And it's really nice when your application scales up. The types, if you don't use proper opaque types, becomes a nightmare, because you're gonna have to grow a lot of environments and a lot of errors. But overall, if you keep them under control, it scales really nicely.
Right. Again, repeating here one more time. Opaque errors means using interfaces for your errors, and you can also
interfaces,
summarize them like that. Yeah.
Interfaces or classes, generally speaking. Here we are using classes because, as you see, we have base tagged constructors for base classes that we can easily compose into more complex.
I'm generally rather skeptical of classes in JavaScript and TypeScript. However, they have one major benefit, which is that they are a type and a term at the same time. So, and that's very useful. So that means we can use them in type and in type annotations and import them purely as a type, but we can also import them as something that is important for the runtime. Yeah, so that was just not super clear for me why effect makes use of some classes in some cases, but that's, I think, one major reason for that.
Anyway, it seems we have it.
All right, wonderful. So let's return that. Nice.
Nice, nice, nice.
All right.
Let's add the derivation.
And if you're the audience, if you're like me and you're like a bit intimidated by the T, derive, lifted, etc., just like see them as patterns that you can at some point hopefully find in some documentation, and just copy paste them and then forget that it's there. And at some point when you want to understand more, you can try to understand it. But the point here is that we later on can use the WriteFile effects, and we can ignore for the time being how it's implemented.
Concretely at what the outputs are. These in a few months with the compiler plugin in a decent stage will go away. In like, you will be able to say proxy service FS, just that, and you get those access for free. Now that requires a lot of work compiler wise, so we're not there yet. At the moment you have to specify, because we can't distinguish based on type information what is a function, what is a constant, what is an effect constant, and other things.
Exactly.
We need to write down this second parameter. But let's take a look at what the types are looking. Let's take a look at WriteFile. This is WriteFile from inside the service.
Perfect. That's very readable.
That's extremely readable, but take a look at the return type. The return type is an effect that doesn't require any environment. The inside of a service exposes the functions just as IOs.
Yep.
It's very good practice not to have any environment here except something that is explicitly provided by context, like a request parameter, anything that is runtime provided. Anything else should be a dependency of the constructor of the service. Anyway, looking at that, in your business logic code, when you're not writing services, you need a way to access the functions from within the environment. And it's very noisy to request the service and use the functions from the service. You want some sort of proxy. That proxy is done by this, derive lifted. You could write those manually, and last time we wrote one manually. It's noisy and it's annoying. Sometimes it's necessary to write those manually if you have like generics around, because this uses TypeScript conditional types, and conditional types erase any generic to unknown. So basically you're getting rid of the generics. But the idea is the signature of WriteFile is exactly the same as before, with the sole key difference that the return type has FS within it.
Right.
This is the core difference. By using this WriteFile, you're taking the function from the environment as a service and then using it.
Yep.
So this is why those derive lifted. And the first argument is used for functions. The second argument is used for constant objects, which could be like const unit equal t.unit. Something that is an effect that would be transformed to t.effect, has fs, never, void, or a brutal value, which will be accessed differently. So there are three different types of accessing, and those are the three different parameters. Obviously, by working at the compiler level, we can realize those differences.
Yep, let's pick this up at a later point again. But yeah, so should we build, maybe now is a good time to separate the everything, you know, like logger related into a separate file.
I think we want to trash down the logger completely.
Okay, great. So I think, so now we can either go into like testing this or using this mode.
I think we wanna make one thing, actually two things: file exists and file delete.
Yep. Let's build a few more of these, so that we have like some nice coverage, and then let's give it a try.
Yeah, because I want to write a test of the type, something that checks if a file is not there, it creates the file, it reads from the file, it deletes the file.
Sounds good. All right, let's do it.
Anyway, let's progress on that. Shall we start to extract things out? Maybe not yet.
Yeah, let's have it grow a bit more and then think about a better structure.
Good.
One thing though, I think we wanted to add the parameters into the error cases, no?
Yes.
All right. And one thing that also just like while seeing you duplicate a bit of code here, like you might think, wow, that's a lot of boilerplate. However, yes, it might be a little bit of boilerplate in the kind of like quote unquote library code, but this is, you write this once and probably someone else has written it for you and you just import it, and all you really care about is that thing you import, which is read file or write file, and then you get to benefit from all of like this this other structure that's already been there, and namely that means like your arrows have like a lot of useful properties, etc. So even if you need to do this wrapping yourself once and like pay the cost of writing a bit of this boilerplate code, it's gonna pay off big time. I've already been there, and that's really great. One little suggestion: maybe you want to, in line 45, rename the error to arrow, so you don't, like, you can simplify it a little bit. Yeah, and then you have it in the other case as well.
And I didn't start by picking up the proper names.
Nice. Okay, and just like that, we have more useful arrows. Okay, great. So let's see, file exists. Actually, it's now going to be interesting. Do we want a file exists, or since there's also there exists, and the way how it's actually working from an implementation perspective is that you get a stats object on something, and then you check what it's like, and then you can check, hey, is this there? Is this a is this a file?
I think at this level we want to proxy this behavior so it exists sync.
Okay.
It's not exists sync, it exists. Why is it that?
Yeah, there you go. Telling you. This is you should use stat now. It's deprecated.
Good. Let's make a proxy for stat.
And that's the thing. Like, there is no stat for file or stat for dir. So this is where we now have like a bit of that creative freedom for. But yeah, in any case, we should have a stat. But then there's a question of like, do we want like a little thing on top of it? And yeah, there we can just pick one.
I think let's start with the most basic one.
It's actually funny that like these, if you think about it, and like for outside of the effect world, and like I think it's generally seen as a big step forward that we have like async await, and in async await we can. You're shaking your head, but like for I think for most people it's seen as a big step forward, but one of the downsides is like that in try catch, in the catch you don't have like any type safety. It's kind of ironic that in the callbacks you have more type safety than with try catch. Yeah, I shouldn't get you started in that. Let's continue.
From the topic, but callbacks have a theoretical background. It's CPS style, continuation passing style. It's very common behavior. Promises are something absurd, out of nothing, that just loses all the type information. They are not an advancement over callbacks. They solve the callback hell for single typed callbacks, which is a single category of the CPS. This is a whole different.
I completely agree with you, but I think to like put this into historic context, like it's JavaScript has never had types in the first place, and the problem at hand for people was callback hell. Anyway, let's not get into that. Maybe another time. Trying to keep this on track.
Roughly. The type of error is that same type error. So let's take a path, fx path live.
Maybe it's now also already a good time to maybe create like in the file system, create a, well, that's very meta, but in this, on the left side of your screen, create a file error.ts and just put all of the errors in there to refactors this a little bit.
Let's get to 4 functions.
Sounds good.
Basic thing before.
4 shall be our threshold. Or
4 shall be our threshold, yeah. fs stats, stat error, that's nice. Stat error. Can't that be interrupted? Start options. Is there an abortable?
That's a good question.
Doesn't seem so.
Nope. Don't think it has a third parameter.
You don't think so?
Oof. Seems like there's just 6 things. Yeah.
Seems no.
So once you've issued the stats, you're stuck with it.
But it should be a single kernel
yeah.
code.
Probably fairly atomic.
Be fairly atomic.
Okay, cool. So we don't even need the effect async interrupt.
Yeah, we need just the effect async.
Can get rid of the controller.
Can get rid of the controller, yes.
Just want to point out that like it's actually so nice when you're using maybe other people like me used React JS before learning about effect, and in React you have use effect, where you have a similar structure here to like the effect async interrupt, where you also have you return sort of the cleanup part. So it's like that resemblance and similarity is nice. All right, so stats. Everything just clicks into place. Amazing.
There we go. And there we go.
Okay, so one more. What should we build a convenience method now on top of it for file exists?
We can write to a file, we can read from a file, we can start a file.
That's been
What
very
do you
useful
want
to
to build
me.
as the fourth one?
Let's build like a convenience thing on top of that, where we can now stay purely in effect land, where we say const file exists, and then we use the stat. We basically chain over the stat, or we map over it.
File exists,
Mm-hmm.
which takes first of all, it should even check if it is.
Just takes a path. Oh, a buffer URL. That's a good question. I've never had a case where I have a path as a buffer, but I guess that's the thing.
Okay. Anyway, let's be as low level as possible.
All right.
File exists.
So I think here we basically just want to pipe and then stat path. All right, and then we tmap. I think map is enough now. We're not invoking another effect.
If it's not a file, if it's a directory, you call file exist on a directory, it's an error.
Because like you want to, okay, yeah, we can handle the semantic
The function
thing.
is called
So,
file exists.
got it. So just to quickly, like for for other peoples who haven't joined our hive mind in this moment, I wanted to suggest that we do tmap and basically just off the stats object read out the necessary property. So I was just assuming that everything is going to be fine and we are just living in the happy path world. And but Michael has been pointing out like already an error case. What if the thing that maybe we found the stats, that's been okay, but we want to like fail ourselves because we see the thing is not a file, but it's a directory. So in that case, as we want to fail, we need to use tchain instead of tmap.
It's a Boolean thing.
Mm-hmm.
Else?
Well, the question is also, if it doesn't exist, I think stat will actually, will it throw? I remember in my wrapper, and you can like look into the implementation, I think I had to like try catch it. And in the catch case, also return false. So we might want to do like a catch tag stat error.
Path is not.
Now we're getting potentially into an explosion of different error cases. But let's see.
Path is not a file.
And I think in that case, we don't have the quote unquote native Node.js error, since this is a semantic error that we introduce. So Michael, I think you need to delete one property in that that error. Like I think line 34 is not a thing here.
Precisely.
All right. For the people watching, can you follow along so far? Is this like, have we lost anyone along the way? Does everything still make sense? All right, making sense to at least one person. Great to hear.
Let's take a look at the types.
All right, the type is nice. Stats error or path is not a file error. Great. That's very readable.
Logical sequence of things.
Nice. All right.
It's a Boolean. But start is file. Actually, here we are failing if it doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I think here we need to like guess we need, yeah. Let's see.
Does start fail?
Yep, I think. Like take a look in the baseline file that we've created. I think that fails. And in that case, we should probably absorb the stats error.
But then stats.
I'm pretty sure you'd need to try catch or similar.
No, it's not a try catch. Can't be a try catch. Here, wait a second. Oh no, yeah, around the FS start, yeah, or FS open. It's not. Is not recommended. Instead, user code should open read file directory and handle the error raised if the file is not available. So they explicitly say don't use that to check.
Well, Stack Overflow has taught me poorly then.
To check if a file exists without manipulating it afterwards, link access is recommended.
But it's so weird. Like when we looked at the deprecation notice of exists, it pointed us to stats. So that's like inconsistent right in the same file here.
Access. Press user permission for a file or directory specified by path. The mode argument is an optional internet that specifies accessibility. Okay. Check file access constants for possible values of mode. The final argument callback is called that is invoked with a potential error if any of the accessibility checks will fail. The error argument will be an error object following this.
So my machines have
instead of a file exists, we want to add a proxy to access at this level of the module, and only later on decide effectively what type of API we wanna expose.
Sounds good. We
have jumped a little bit too far. So instead of file exists, access.
I mean, we're essentially now doing a different thing. So the file exists thing still makes sense to have later, but we're just now.
But maybe built on top of access.
Exactly. So
on top of a different thing.
Yep.
So let's.
So I mean, we can keep it and then later adjust it, so we don't like need to get rid of that work now.
But it's materially wrong. So it doesn't check properly.
Okay, let's do that.
Anyway, FS access, does it take? No, just mode. Path like and mode.
Going proper low level here.
At least to start with.
Yep. Wait, so hasn't the mode been required, mandatory in the original API?
Yeah, but it was
sorry. Yeah, it was. That makes sense.
Because it was not callback based. The last one needs to be a callback.
Yep.
access error that we have to create, and the output, what is that?
I don't know.
It doesn't return anything.
I guess there basically matters, like, does it throw or not? Or like in the callback case, does it have
either
an
it
error?
throws or not. It's a
Oh man, dealing with all of these callbacks is like it's a bit of a throwback to like the early days of Node for me.
But we are building a Raptor to avoid doing that later on.
Hopefully the last time I need to deal with those.
People consider it a solved problem, but it's not a solved problem. It is for us, not in general. Access path.
And I suppose you can't cancel that either.
You can't cancel that either, but it's really a single call in the kernel, so there's no way of canceling it. The arguments are path and mode.
Could you quickly explain why you'd like that explicit signature here?
This one? Because the mode key always exists.
Got it.
So, if error, we resume with a failure. Type new access error, mode, path, and the error is back.
Okay, and the other case, we just resume with a unit, I suppose.
With a unit, yes.
All right. So let's build the file exists thing on top of it now. And just a quick time check. I think we want to wrap up in the next 15 minutes or so. Probably doesn't leave us enough time to get into the streaming, but I'd suggest we give the file exists function a try now and then try to like use it somewhere. Whatever is the quickest. Maybe it's a test, maybe it's just like a little script we run in the Node terminal. So let's see.
File access constant f OK. File is visible to the calling process.
And a quick question. So access, is that specifically for files, or would this also now work?
No, that's plugs. Access is on file descriptors.
So would that also work for directories?
I think there is something for directories, or maybe no. Desync directory or directory. The path is not a directory, okay. But this should be file access constant. So here it's explicit, file is visible. So there's a good point here. The mode, I think the reason it's like that, the reason it's a number is that you can mix modes.
Yeah.
And how do you mix modes that are number with, I think, the logical and the logical OR?
Yeah, I mean, it's good old Boolean algebra here.
Good old Boolean algebra for those checks. Which is also, by the way, how many things in the compiler are actually
right. Yeah. I mean, those were, it's a very low level thing, so there the efficiency is worth it.
But const file exists. Now we know how to do that.
Nice. And it's much more low level than my implementation, but I've learned something new today. So that's good.
We use access on the path. Okay. Fine.
Yeah, I really would like to have a VS Code refactoring utility where it can where you saw like, hey, extract this as an interface, extract that as a type. I'd like to mark some code and say wrap it in a pipe. Maybe a good thing to look into for a future effect time. Okay, I think this one we don't have.
But wait a second, what I'm not sure is that here this access is erroring.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have access to it. If the file is not okay for us, it's not visible. It's visible to the calling process. But if it's not there, or if we don't have permission,
mm-hmm.
a different thing. If we don't have permission,
so we need the stats after all.
if I don't have permission, the file exists, but I don't have permission. I'm not sure how to track that case.
All I can say is I've used the stat thing before and worked. It might be not as absolutely efficient.
Does your function return valid if you're calling it on a directory?
It's a good question. I mean, you can look into it. Take a look into the baseline file. If it's here, so I have file directory exists. So you see it here. And you see there's also one for symlinks. And
we're using the stat.
Yeah.
Catch tag, file error not found, but here in stat. Error code. So you're using the error code to track that.
Mm-hmm.
Is it documented anywhere? Otherwise, let's check the flags. This is only access, okay.
I think this is also like probably diminishing returns here now. I think we can just go with the stat thing and
I think we
call
can
it a day.
just use access for now. If it exists, it exists. Actually, it should be path.
Yeah.
Is path accessible?
Now it's semantically more, or like more technically more correct. Semantically further away from like what I was looking for.
File exists. Okay, let's keep it as a file exists. But anyway, here we have the error, which this time is an access error. File exists error has an access error, which already contains everything. We don't really need anything else. So it's map error new file exists error.
All right.
Not sure if that should actually return a Boolean, but we are losing information if we make it return a Boolean.
Wait, so it doesn't return a Boolean?
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I feel about that. Since like I'm expecting to return a Boolean, I think, and given we're already creating this net new anyway, we might as well.
Let's make it catch.
I guess just return to succeed false. Do we even need a fold M?
Yeah, because you have to recover. I don't want to specify a map and a catch-all. I like to fold on both branches.
But wouldn't just fold also work?
Fold? No, because fold, you're folding over the error into an error. Fold. Unless I'm mistaken in semantic. No, it's to an output. You're right.
Yeah.
It is to an output. Precisely right. Yeah.
All right. Just here also a note for the future while you're digging into the TypeScript compiler. I feel for example, for fold, if the arguments could not be positional, but if they could be named, I think this could be beneficial. I mean, it's less of a problem now where you have the inlay hints, but still something that I generally prefer for APIs.
Well, the only way to do that in valid syntax is to request an object.
Yep.
As input, and that's very bad for performance. Now, I think compiler-wise,
performance on a type system level or performance on a runtime?
On a runtime level.
I see.
What we could do at the compiler level is, given a function with a signature in parameters, create a function that accepts an object only if the object is inlined, and there you can use normal, like we can work around the thing. Like when typing the do, it's valid JS syntax, but it types differently in TypeScript. It type checks differently.
Right.
Something of that type could be done, but by no means in an easy way.
Okay.
Anyway,
cool.
We have our file exists thing.
And then let's give it a try. Let's see whether we can do this in 5 minutes.
We need a way to delete a file. Otherwise, we are creating without deleting.
We can do this afterwards. I think with other time isn't. Let's have a append only. All right, here you're gonna blaze through it. I see.
Okay, it's RM. It takes a path like, and it takes RM options. And I guess this is also abortable. I don't care. Path. Is it a path like? Yeah, it is a path like. Second arguments are the options. No, it doesn't. Okay, even that is not abortable. Okay.
I think in this case, you want to use 2 question marks instead of the or.
What should I do here? It's an RM error.
Probably want to make the last error member explicitly undefined.
What undefined? This?
It's not important, but in the error definition.
Yeah, inside the error, thanks. Sure. We don't need the abort controller. We don't have an interrupt. Oh. And I think that's it.
All right. Let's give it a try. We have 3 more minutes.
Best file system. Adam, let's not generate UUIDs or stuff like that. Let's pretend everything works fine.
That's good.
So first of all, I want to ask if actually I would like to do something. Otherwise, this test is going to become boring. Let's rewrite this test using generators.
You guessed the right number of parentheses. All right, we have a minute to do this test.
File exists, file push. The reason I want to do that will become apparent now. Now I'm stretching my luck with parentheses. What's going on?
There we
Magic.
go.
There we go. So I can now simply use my const exists, and we expect that to not exist.
Which is a Boolean instead of a thing that throws. All right, let's run it and then wrap it right there.
Precisely. Let's remove the baseline.
Yep.
So the project compiles. Test packages node tests fs.
Fingers crossed. Oh my God, it worked.
The first time.
Incredible. That's great. Awesome. Why did you even write the test if we knew it works? That's awesome. Yeah, I think that lets us end it here on time.
Yeah.
This was fun. Learned a bunch about file systems, a node, etc., and like how to better wrap that in effect. Partially like unnecessary knowledge now that the work is done and I can just use it. But no, this was really great, and
I think it opens up for the next time go deeper at the lower level, implemented using stream, like WriteFile as a stream in an efficient way.
That's great. Let's certainly do that. Let's see when we do that. That's another question.
Yeah,
but yeah, thanks so much everyone else for tuning in. I think we'll be back with another topic in 2 weeks from now. Michael's working on some pretty crazy stuff right now in the TypeScript, literally like in the TypeScript compiler. So maybe we get a glimpse into that in 2 weeks. But yeah, until then, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks everybody.
All right.
Cheers.
Bye. Ciao.
Ciao.